Welcome to a video on user interface design, also called UID, where we will be learning about user interfaces and how they're designed. So, what's UID? We'll be leveling it down first and then start from the bottom to have a better understanding of what UID is. So, UID or user interface design is a subset of a field of study called human computer interaction, HCI. So, what's human computer interaction? As the name says, I'm a human, I have a computer, and how I interact with the computer to, carry out work or to, satisfy some needs is human computer interaction. So, human computer interaction is an understanding of how people and computers work together to satisfy needs. And these needs are satisfied in the most effective way possible. Now, we have somewhat of an understanding of what human computer interaction is. So, in this broad spectrum, where does UI sit, right? So, UI or the user interface sits between humans or us being users and the computers. So, you have users, computers, and then your UI sits in between. So, UI is a part of a computer or its software that allows people to see, touch, hear, or interact with that computer in an effective way. So that's UI, and design of that UI is UID. The user interface has two essential components, that is your input and your output. The input is how people communicate their needs to your computer or their computer. And this can be through keyboard or any pointing devices such as your mice, drawing tablets, and all of that stuff. And once the computer takes in that input, it processes it, and that processing result is given back to you. And how this result is displayed is your output. It can be through your screen, through speakers, main sound, printers, and all of those devices. And this is your input and output. A proper user interface can be designed by implementing proper input and output functionalities effectively. So if your input and output functionalities and their mechanisms are perfect, you have a perfect UI. The user interface. The UI is the front end of your application, and if a user has to use your software, he has to go through that user interface to access the underlying software. The software becomes more popular if its UI is attractive. And now, what do I mean by attractive? So, having a beautiful UI implementation is attractive, and if your UI is attractive, people are attracted towards your application. This can be done by various ways, by having proper curved UI elements spaced together, spaced nicely, spaced together, spaced nicely, and having a proper color palette, having smooth, clean transitions, animations, all of that. Simple to use. Simple to use. Okay, so now your computer has or carries out various functionalities, and to do that or to carry out some work or to do some work, there is UI for users to access that functionality. And this UI must be simple enough and straightforward. Like, for example, you have your phone and you have the flashlight. And if a user has to turn on the flashlight, your UI must be simple enough. That is just a switch. And if you overcomplicate that switch or a toggle button, people are driven away from your software, which is bad. Responsive in a short time. Again, now I took the example of a UI that turns on your a UI that is used to turn on your flashlight. Now, for example, I have a toggle button right there. So if I hit that toggle button, flashlight turns on. And to tell me that the flashlight is on, there is something that goes on in the UI, something to show me that yes, your flashlight is on. And this should not take a lot of time. This should be responsive and be real quick, clear to understand. Yeah, your UI's implementation should be straightforward. You don't have to make it too complex, too cluttered. If it's too cluttered and have people have a difficulty in understanding what's going on, obviously they're driven away. That should not happen. It should be clean, concise, and to the point. So consistent on all interface screens, very important. So for example, I have an application on my phone running, and the same application runs on a tablet, which is a device with a bigger screen. Now, in that, you have buttons. For example, buttons might render neatly and perfectly in my phone, and when it's used in the tablet, might have different sizes. Sometimes the button's too huge, too small, or it's clipped out, or does not exist at all. This should not happen. It should stay consistent. These should be scaled properly to that screen sizes or whatever screen sizes are used. So it should stay consistent on all interface screens. That's your user interface. So there are two types of interfaces. That's your command line interface, your CLI, and your graphical user interface, your GUI. So in CLI, as you know, it's a line interface, we use commands or a command prompt is given wherein you put in commands and you interact with your computer. So basically you need commands and knowledge about this command should be known by the user. So it's a bit complicated to use CLI as you have to know commands, know what they do, how to use them, their syntax, and all of that complicated stuff. And graphical user interface. So GUI or GUI provides simple interactive interface for user to use. And GUI can be a combination of hardware and software implementation. GUI can be graphical. It is graphical, such as your mice, your pointing, your icons. All of these are GUI, which makes interacting with the computer pretty easy. And this is your CLI. This is what it might look. It's not the prettiest, but yeah, gets the job done. You have all these sorts of commands that's going on, and GUI is pretty simple to use compared to CLI. Now in CLI, obviously you use commands to carry out the same functions or the same functionalities carried out by using commands. This might look complicated, but is way cooler to use. Give you that. And we'll look at GUI with a real-time example. So yeah, right here is a live example of an application, a phone or a mobile application that uses a pretty neat GUI. So right here is your front end, which is displayed right here. This is your menu, this is your profile icon, and this is your welcome screen, and all of your smart devices. So basically, this application and this front end of an application that is used to control your smart devices is being shown here. And when I said responsive or response in a short time, this is what I meant. So now I have a smart bulb, imagine, which is a smart device, and my application controls that. And when I click, it shows me that yes, your smart bulb is on, and it has a clear indication that yeah, your bulb is on. When I win, just turn it off, it's off. Click on it, it's on. So this is responsive and response in a short time, and all of this is pretty straightforward. Yeah, that's on, that's off, gives you a clear indication, and that is what you need in an application. So this is the code behind. So right now I'm using Flutter, which is amazing. I can just go on and on about Flutter. uh, Single code base, has cross-platform implementation. It ports to its own engine. That's pretty good. So yeah, let me go through the code real quick. Won't dig in deep, just go through it. So now this is my main screen, and I have a home page implementation right here. Here you can see I'm using a stateful widget because the state changes. You can see the state of the widget changes every time I click. So that is why I use a stateful widget. Now I have a list of my smart devices, which is a list. Okay, so a list of lists to say that contains the name of my smart device, the icon, which is an asset that is stored right over here in my icons folder, and then the default value, which is true. By default, it would be turned on. And then I have a non-changed function. We'll come back to this. From here is where the widget or this application starts off. So we have a scaffold that is the whole of our screen, and we have a safe area. Now, what's a safe area? You have many phones that have notches right here, or the Apple's dynamic island right here. So you don't want your application to be overlapping, or most important features like these to be overlapping on that. So if that happens, you can't click on it and interact with it, which is a problem. And that is why we use safe area to give some distance. And then we have a child, which is a column, a widget here, provide padding to these, create some space. We use image assets such as these icons, and I've used a proper color palette here, which is black, amber, and white and green to indicate that it's on. So we have our image assets. That is these. All the images are image assets. And you can see we have our assets right here. And the spacing in our application right here is consistent. So the space is not too much, too less, or very absurd looking. Nope, it's just perfect. This is just the front end implementation of the complete application. Yeah, we have our text saying welcome home and the user's name, that's my name. Right now it's hard coded into the application. We can have something dynamic. So once you sign in, you have your UI, just take in that name and display your name. And then going ahead, we have a divider right here. So it separates your user, the welcome screen, and your list of devices. So these for now are just 4 devices you can add on. And yeah, your smart devices, that says it. And now here, I'm using a grid view builder. What this is exactly is, I want my widget, this is a widget, to be shown in a specific way. And it's built off of this list that I've implemented right here. So I take in the list and start building widgets based off that. So you can see item count, my smart devices dot length, that is my smart devices, which is a list. Dot length provides the list of my, I mean the length of my list, which is 4 for now. So 4, and I have a grid delegate, and this takes in uh, a cross-axis count and the child aspect ratio. So cross-axis count is how many elements or how many widgets do I want to be displayed on a cross-axis. This is your cross-axis, this way, the horizontal way. So it's 2. I want 2. And child aspect ratio. This is your child, a single widget, and the aspect ratio is 1 is to 1.2. So that's 1, and that's 1.2 the lengthwise. So that's that. An item builder, context, index. This is something the Flutter uses. I won't go on that. And then, yeah, we return a smart device box. So what happens? We have a separate implementation to, bring about these widgets or to show or display these widgets and to change their state. That is this thing. We have a separate function or separate class to do that. So now we have our smart devices box, that is this thing, to implement as a whole different class. So now again, it goes to a stateless widget. This thing, a stateless widget. So we'll take in the name, the icon path, and the power. So what the name is your smart device's name. The icon path, that is your assets path, that is, yeah, your assets path. And then the power, if it's turned on and off, and then a function of type bool called onChanged. So once you toggle the button, you want something to happen. So that's your onChanged function. And then this is your constructor. Going ahead, we'll design the box. Each of these boxes are designed right here. So you can see border radius circular. I said circular, neatly spaced and all that to make it attractive. So that is what I was talking about. And then you have your image, and then yeah, using something called a ternary operator to set the colors right here. If the power is turned on, I want it to be black. That is this thing. And if it's on, I want it to be, I mean, if it's on, I want it to have a black text and the icon color turns black and the background is white. That is right here given. And if it's off, that is if it's off, I want the text to be in amber and the icon to be in amber and the whole box to be black. So that is that. And I've used Cupertino switches or Cupertino toggle button. That is your Apple's toggle button. And I've turned it to be vertical, up and down, because it looks better. So yeah, so whenever I toggle it, the onChange function is called, and this onChange function is provided to this through here, onChanged, power switch changed, the function that I talked about earlier. Now we look into it. So once we call and we set state, that is we change the state of this whole widget by saying that yeah, we'll take the value and set the value for that current widget or that current smart device. So once I click, I take in the value and set the value. So if it's off, it takes it off. If it's on, it takes it on. So that's the whole app or the front end of the application. So that's GUI and that's the user interface. So if a user has to use the function or turn on smart AC, smart bulb, and all that functionalities to be carried out, he uses the GUI at the front end of your application. Thanks for watching.